Oh no, I forgot my cat ears for the whole time. Just pretend that I'm wearing these for the whole video. Hello and welcome back to Writing Women, the show where I talk about the women who exist in fiction and the people who created them. Today, I'm continuing my Tamora Pierce marathon with my favorite book in the series, Daja's book. I also have my embroidery, so gonna keep this running gag going. I'm also sitting in a different spot in my room. I'm actually on my bed this time. So if you hear this noise, it's because my bed makes noise when you move on it. So sorry about that. This book came out in 1998 and features Daja Kisubo as the main protagonist. This is, of course, the big one for me. I've said it a bunch at this point, and I'll say it again here. Daja is my favorite character of these four. Any story featuring her is going to hit me pretty hard in the feels, but this one came at me from a different angle than I was expecting it to. That seems to be a pretty constant theme in me re-experiencing these stories as an adult. This one hits harder for a way different reason than the other ones did, and it's largely because this one includes a character with a pretty severe physical disability. But of course, I will get into that later. Until then, we'll do the recap. Much like in my last video, I will not be repeating the full names and powers and titles of every single character, so if you're not familiar with the books and you're a little confused, just go back to my other videos, starting with Sandry's book, and watch from there. You can find them all in the Tamora Pierce playlist. The main four and their teachers are traveling in the northern part of Emelan. They are with Sandry's uncle, Duke of Emelan, who is investigating a drought in that region. In the Goldridge Valley, Rosethorn learns that the local mage, Yaron Firetamer, and his father had been stopping all forest fires in the area for years. The group stops and settles in to help out the locals. Daja is working at the forge, but gets interrupted by the entrance of a trader woman named Polyam. The trader is from 10th Caravan Idaram, and she is also very physically deformed. Because of her deformities, she is considered by her caravan to be basically useless, so she is the one that they send to bargain with locals for basic goods. Daja freezes when she sees the woman, knowing exactly what will happen when Polyam realizes that Daja is Trangxi. Daja tries to call to Triss, who is nearby, with their magic, but Triss ignores her and keeps reading her book. At this point, Polyam has seen Daja's blank staff and is shouting into the void for a smith because she has to pretend that she cannot see or hear Daja. Triss finally storms in and confronts the trader woman, but to no real effect. She won't accept anything made by Daja or really deal with her at all. Shortly after this, Daja is working at the forge, and she accidentally leaks some magic into the metal she's working with and creates a living metal vine that continues to grow. Frostpine and the other adults are fascinated by the creation and want to study it, but the traders want to buy it. They send Polyam to bargain with Daja after performing an expensive and very time-consuming ritual to cleanse her so that none of Daja's bad luck will rub off on her. Daja is just happy to be talking with another trader again. But her siblings and teachers point out that Polyam has not brought any of the traditional things that you would use to open up such important trade negotiations in the traders' culture. Polyam is, of course, annoyed by their demands, but she knows they're right, and she returns with a full spread. Daja finally gets to really enjoy the food and the tea of her people that she hasn't really been able to experience since the death of her family, though it is tinged with the sadness of knowing that she can't live this life anymore. Though Polyam believes firmly in the rightness of the traditions of their people, though those same traditions ostracize her as well as people like Daja, she and Daja begin to form kind of an unlikely friendship through their negotiation process. Polyam tells Daja about the accident that lost her the use of most of her body, and also cost her a place of honor in the caravan. And Daja tells Polyam about her feelings from being Trangxi. While all this is going on, Rosethorn sees the potential for a pretty massive forest fire. So she sets Briar to making a special burn ointment of hers, and Yaron Firetamer, the mage, is very offended by this. Yaron also seems to be offended by the very presence of Nico in this party. He eventually explains that most mages barely scrape by with what they know, despite being pretty crucial to the survival of everybody around them. But when great mages like Nico come to town, everybody forgets about the mages who've been keeping them alive this whole time, and give the great mages like Nico a higher place at the table. The children are also having problems with their powers bleeding into each other. Sandry and Briar accidentally use lightning to light things on fire, and all four of them just are having very weird issues with their powers mixing. Lark sets Sandry to the task of weaving a map of their powers, using thread that has absorbed a little bit of each of them. She creates a more polished weave where she separates out their powers but still maintains the bond that they share. Lady Enolia of Goldridge, who is Sandry's cousin by marriage to one of Duke Vedris's late sons, sees Sandry doing this weaving work and is a little bit offended at the fact that a noblewoman is doing such a low thing as weaving. When Daja and Polyam finally conclude their negotiations over the living metal vine, they're both a little bit sad to say goodbye. Daja rides out with 10th Caravan Idaram to say goodbye to them. Though, of course, she and Polyam have to ride in the very back, way apart from everybody else. While they are on the road, the others join Lady Enolia and Yarin Firetamer on a watchtower to observe the forest. Yarin brags that he has put out all of the fires. Rosethorn points out that the lack of even small fires over the decades has left masses of flammable debris on the forest floor. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog drinking. He's very sick and he can't move, so I have all of his food and water in here on the floor. Rosethorn also points out that the recent drought has left even the healthiest of trees dry as tinder and just ready to catch fire. She says that fires could have been smoldering under the tree line for days and they wouldn't know until those flames were out of control. Ever the type of story that has a lot of dramatic irony, fires start popping up above the tree line. Yarin is already at his limit, and he further exhausts himself by trying to put out all of these new fires that are popping up all over the place, eventually killing himself with the effort. No one on the watchtower has the ability to put out these now raging fires. Lady Enolia passes by Yarin's corpse and runs to try and warn her people of the danger. The remaining children and their teachers now realize that Daja and the traders are riding directly into a raging inferno. They call to Daja through magic, and she tries to warn the traders, but of course they pretend that they can't hear her. Polyam steps in and manages to get them to listen. They are unfortunately too late and are now surrounded by the blaze. Daja faces a moment of indecision, but only a moment. She could escape herself and leave these traders to their fate, knowing that they wouldn't risk their lives to save her if they were in the same position. She knows that trying to channel the fire will likely destroy her body. Her honor wins out, and she steps out in front of the caravan to face the blaze by herself. Through their magical bond, her family is able to help her capture the fire and weave it together and push it through a vent in the ground all the way to a glacier that is miles off. The glacier puts out the fire, and also it melts a little bit of the ice so the water can run down into the valley and relieve a little bit of the drought. The fire burning through her body destroys Daja's clothes and her trader's staff, and it melts the copper tip of the staff onto her hand. When the fire is finally out, Daja looks around to make sure that the members of the caravan are safe, only to see every single member of the caravan kneeling on the ground in a reverential gesture directed toward her. Not surprising, as she must have looked like some sort of goddess, gripping the flames of a raging inferno and plunging it into the ground rather than letting it devour them. They return to Goldridge with Daja, and they send runners to the council of their people to have Daja's name wiped from the records of Trangshi. They present her with a new staff and invite her to join them. And Daja is again faced with an important decision. Does she rejoin the traders and get back the life she could have lived? Or does she return to Winding Circle with her new family? In the days immediately following the fire, while they're treating burn victims and burying the dead, Daja and her family begin working on a secret project using the new living metal that she's created. When the traders come to announce their departure, Daja gracefully tells them that she won't be joining them. She has changed too much to go back to the life of a trader and doesn't want to leave her new family. They tell her to keep the staff that they gave her anyway, and that she will still no longer be Trengshi. Daja presents Polyam with a gift of friendship that she won't accept any payment for, because she sees Polyam as the reason that she's able to talk with traders again. The gift that she had been working on is a living metal prosthetic leg that will function almost exactly like a real leg. It will allow Polyam to ride again and regain her place of honor in the caravan. Polyam embraces Daja, and her siblings are pretty happy to know that she won't be leaving them. I honestly don't even know where to start on this one. It has everything I love in any type of story. A character who has been done wrong by some group of people, getting her chance to shine and prove those people wrong. She even gets what passes for an apology from those people. It is telling that Daja proves herself to 10th Caravan Idaram, but when the time comes, she chooses not to accept their offer. She's been cast out by traders and lived so long with a more diverse family that she realized she didn't want what they had to offer anymore. She didn't want to go back to a lifestyle that would stifle her abilities and try to train out of her the habits that she had learned while she had been away. You can want someone's approval while not giving up who you are to achieve it. Here we really begin to get a sense of just how powerful the children are. There is a scene where Nico tests Daja's honor to see if she might try to undercut the traders to try and find a better buyer elsewhere. He's happy to find out that Daja planned to accept a fairly low offer for the vine to try and help Polyam regain a little bit of status as a good bargainer. He stresses to the kids that they are growing up into a world where they can very easily abuse their power for wealth. There's an interesting attempt at some sort of censorship of this scene in some versions of the book, though. Someone pointed it out on the Tamora Pierce subreddit, and now I can't stop thinking about it. Apparently, in some versions of the book, the scene is totally rewritten, and Nico's test and following lecture about greed and power and wealth and all that is removed and is just replaced by Frostpine coming in and commenting on how it's no wonder the caravan is still there because they want to take longer to bargain for the vine. Nobody has a very satisfying answer to why that change might have happened. I chalk it up to whatever editorial powers that changed my version of the Song of the Lioness books for whatever reason, specifically The Woman Who Rides Like a Man. If you're curious to know about that, go all the way back to the beginning of my channel and my Song of the Lioness episodes, specifically The Woman Who Rides Like a Man and Lioness Rampant. I talk about the weird inconsistencies in my printing of the books. I've now read this book at two very, very different points in my life. Once as a teenager who was a little more taller and broad-shouldered and typically more masculine presenting than a lot of my peers. At that time, Daja made me feel like I was powerful instead of abnormal. Around 15 years later, though, my heart flipped over when I read about Polyam. When reading these things originally, the things that stuck with me were the things that I could personally identify with. Those things are the easiest to remember because you have more of a personal stake in them. As a teenager, I didn't really have much experience with physical disabilities, and so my memories of Polyam's existence just kind of slipped away. That is, until I read it again as an adult who had injured their back and had a subsequent chain reaction of problems in their legs and feet that at one point made it so I could not walk. I can often pass as a person without mobility problems, but often I have to wear a large brace on my knee or a support brace on my back, and sometimes even a full immobilizer that covers my entire left leg. I guess it's my version of the living metal leg because it allows me to stand up and move around a little bit easier than I would be able to do without it. When Polyam put the leg on and walked normally again for the first time in a long time, I was sobbing. I know what it feels like to strap something onto your leg and suddenly you can walk again. I knew this book would be an emotional ride for me, but I honestly could not have predicted this. Tammy crafts these characters with so much care. She tries to show a diverse cast of characters to her audience, which is typically, especially in 1998, only really used to seeing your standard cookie-cutter, able-bodied protagonist. The framework of the Trader group was used pretty effectively to show how discrimination affects people with disabilities. And it's reinforced with both Daja and Polyam's situations that often the discrimination you face is through events that were completely out of your control. Polyam did not choose to be in an accident, and Daja did not choose to lose her entire family in a tragic shipwreck. but they are both discriminated against heavily for the fallout of those situations. Sometimes children's or young adult books can be really heavy-handed with their moralizing on some issues, specifically basic things surrounding right and wrong. But I consistently find that Tammy is very good at weaving these stories with morals that are good for the children, without bludgeoning her audience with them. The Circle books have aged a lot more than the older Tortall books in their approach to social issues. You still find an occasional yikes moment, but they're much fewer and far between. The relationship between the main four with each other and with their teachers isn't always perfect, and it sometimes even results in fights. But they are ultimately a testament of the fact that diverse groups of people are stronger together than they are apart, despite their sometimes extreme differences. Thank you for watching me embroider some more. I can't believe I only have one more book in this series. That's actually really sad. I need to really prepare myself for the next one. Briar's book is pretty topical for 2020, and I anticipate a lot of feelings. If you like the video, please remember to actually like the video. It really does help me out. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to talk more about this book, go ahead and drop me a comment. You can also head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/writingwomen, where you can support what I do here for as little as $2 a month. Patreon members get access to a bunch of rewards like early access to videos, input on some creative choices, and ultimately a vote in where I take the channel. Thanks to my current patrons, Mary Doc Brandybuck, Ms. Psycho, Amy Chu, aka The Doctor, Lord Butterbutt, and Bruce.